I'll give the introduction and then break for a little bit of a tangent that explains the law, I think, a lot better. At first glance, it seems that the status of men is higher than that of women. Men rule and influence while women receive and are acted upon. However, in the long term, feminine influence becomes stronger. If you remember, we said, Shema b'ni musar avicha, v'al titosh Torah imecha, the Torah is taught by the mother. And the sages teach in Bereshit Rabbah, there is a tale of a Hasid, pious man who was married to a certain Hasidah, a righteous woman or pious woman, and they did not have any children together. They said, we are not helping God at all, so they got divorced. The man went and married an evil woman who in turn made him evil, and the woman went and married an evil man, and she made him righteous. We thus learn that everything stems from the woman. So there is a halacha that is not really our topic, which is who do you help first, a man or a woman who are in danger. So if originally if it's somebody if it's drowning, they're drowning in the river, and you can only save one of them, and there's a man and a woman. So originally the consideration was that you should save the man first because they can keep more mitzvot. But modern day halacha says that it really depends on the context, and it's more likely that the man knows how to swim and can save themselves or to grab onto something else, but a woman is more afraid, and therefore, at most times that we save the woman first. And then if we can help the man, we do. But also in other areas of halacha, pikuach nefesh, in terms of clothing, feeding, and redeeming from captivity, the woman comes first for very obvious physical considerations where they will suffer a lot more as a woman than physically and emotionally than a man does. And so women do take precedence even in those areas of halacha, which sound a little bit iffy. So, and now let's continue. Man's human aspects are more pronounced. Intellect is indeed the pinnacle of humanity. Woman's ability to receive divinity is more pronounced. Therefore, even though it is the husband who is commanded to learn Torah and establish the values, the general attitude toward those values is more affected by woman. Her righteousness or wickedness radiates onto her husband. In the long term, the broader approach of faith to faith is more influential. Therefore, if the woman is righteous and she and her husband have a good relationship, it follows that her husband will also eventually become a righteous person. And if she is evil, her husband will presumably also be wicked. And if you remember, we talked a long time ago about how in the Mishkan, the women were a lot more predominantly giving to the Mishkan. And it says very specifically in Parshas Vayakel, Ve'avo ha'anashim al anashim. Literally, the men followed the women in bringing these donations. And so there are allusions to this idea within the mystical tradition. Initially, the man's advantage is more apparent, but in the future, the advantage of women will be more apparent, as alluded in the verse in Yirmiyahu, for God has created something new on earth, a woman courts a man. Which, of course, today, most couples get married after the man is the one who makes the first move or even the proposal. There are, of course, women that propose to men, but the majority, as far as I know, is still men proposing. In this world, our gaze is external, and therefore the advantages of man, the one who learns and leads, are greater than those of women. However, in the future, we will gain more profound vision, and then the virtue of faith and intuitive perception will be revealed, such that the status of men and women will become equal. To quote Rabbi Dr. Shul from last night, it's not so much about that we care about what will be in the future, but rather that we understand that that is the actual final goal. Meaning that if we are talking now about what will be in the time of the Mashiach, even if God forbid we don't merit to be in that time, we still look forward to the idea of understanding this inner faith and intuitive understanding and perception of God. So that So in the world to come, the virtue of faith and divine perception will be so evident that the status of woman will be greater than that of men. Even then, there will be a place and a need for learning as well as for righteous, rigorous definitions, yet the feminine emotional aspect will take primacy or priority. It can be said that after Adam's original sin and the introduction of the evil inclination into human beings, it is more difficult to rely upon one's intuition and natural emotions. Hence, the primary struggle with the evil inclination is guided by one's intellect, which must control and direct emotions. But there's two things to be said about Adam and Eve. One is that Eve didn't hear from God directly about the prohibition to eat from the tree of knowledge. It was Adam who told her. So it will be like today a prophet or a rabbi telling somebody how to keep the law, but they didn't hear it directly from God. And the second thing is that if he really wanted to blame her for bringing death and suffering into the world, he should have called her Mavet, literally death. But he didn't call her death. He called her Chava, Em Kol Chai. She's the mother of all living beings. So it's not only the hopeful and the hopefulness and optimism, but rather just the whole world changed to the worse for them, but he didn't blame the wife. Um, well, initially he did, but he understood, like I said, that he should call her Chava, the mother of all living, and not the mother of all death. However, as the world becomes rectified and faith and morals become a common legacy, the concern that natural emotion will erupt in a misguided and destructive manner lessens. As a result, impediments to emotional expression will be removed, its merit revealed, and with it, the virtue of women. We should not say that the world to come is so remote from us that it has no influence on our lives at all, because even today it is buried deeply inside of us. The Talmud says that Shabbat is 1/60th of the world to come. So every Shabbat we get to enjoy this special connection, and especially again with the regular way of doing things where the woman is the one who prepares the house for Shabbat, and we just finished all of the laws of Shabbat. So it's very, very much connected to that. The external soul corresponds to this world, the internal spirit corresponds to the future, and the innermost soul corresponds to the world to come. Therefore, even today, the deeper we delve and the more we find woman's influence. However, the arrangement is such that woman's humility in accepting man's virtue and influence allows her to express more and more of her own virtue. So before we conclude, I just wanted to say that even before the Nazi leader became in power in 1933, he said that his battle is against the Jewish people who invented the moral compass and consciousness, and so somebody who saw that speech told me once that he said, if Imach Shimonik actually had a relationship with a woman, maybe he wouldn't have come out to be that terrible, because and even more so, or even deeper, the only country in the world that had in its anthem fatherland was Nazi Germany. Mother Russia is one of the most common quotes, and Ima Adama in Hebrew, one of my favorite songs. So the mother and the refinedness of the spirit is a lot more important to sustaining the world. It is possible to expand upon this topic, but this is not the place. We shall only briefly allude to the fact that the relationship between the sun, which radiates, and the moon, which receives, resembles the male-female relationship. Initially, they were both equal, but as a result of the moon's arrogance, it was diminished. Again, we're not blaming women for what the moon did or didn't do, but that's how it happened. However, in truth, at the heart of the matter is its virtue is great, for it receives the light here in this world. To a certain extent, this is also the relationship between the heavens and the earth. At first glance, the skies are more exalted, but upon second glance, the purpose of creation was for the earth, and the final outcome was conceived at the outset. This is also the relationship between the tribe of Yehuda and the tribe of Yosef. On one hand, Yehuda reigned. However, the most cherished and beloved son was Yosef, who was beautiful like a woman and who was capable of revealing all the highest ideals within this world in beauty and splendor. And so there's really, like, you could spend a week just talking about this, and there's so many other examples. But let me just end with the idea of Kiddush Levana, the blessing of the moon once a month, which we can already do this week, both for Ashkenazim and Sephardim. And so we talk about King David being, instead of the sun, like the moon and the Hitchadshut and the renewal and the coming of the Mashiach, which is all related to this idea of being the receptor. And so we'll stop here and open up for questions. The learning today is sponsored by Shoshana in memory of her father, whose yahrzeit is today, and we'll stop here.